Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are World Class Supply Chain Solutions Incorporated, and we would like to thank you all for having us here today. My name is Erika De Vere, and my colleagues are
Stephen Tolbert and Lyle Furtado.
And we are here to assist you with some of the challenges you all face within your European market. So, our agenda. We will give you a brief background of the case and the overall objective of why we are here. Then, we will move forward with our recommendations and some solutions in order to meet those objectives. We will then provide you all with an optimization model, and then we will conclude our presentation with a wrap-up of what was discussed and give you all an opportunity for questions and answers. So, who is Cookie Monsters Inc. Incorporated, CME? Well, you're a globally recognized brand within the packaged food industry, with a growth strategy by way of organic growth and by acquiring niche brands. With 18 manufacturing locations, there are 70 suppliers that facilitate your services and provide you all with a multitude of quotes. So what are some of CME's relevant issues? Well, as CME continues to experience growth, the complexities of your networks increases as well, therefore fragmenting your supply chain network. Next, there are limitations within your transportation and warehouse capacities. Because your products move through multiple channels before reaching your end customer, there's inadequacies in consolidation of services. CME also participates in rigid long-term contracts, now affording CME the flexibility to take advantage of current market conditions. Therefore, if CME does want to take those advantages on, there's a potential penalty of $230,000 per contractual year. Lastly, CME does participate in pay-as-you-go warehouses that are being occupied by other companies. So as CME continues to experience growth, these warehouses may not be able to provide you with the storage space for your products. So what is our overall objective? Well, it's simple. It is to optimize your logistics and supply chain networks. How will we do this? Two ways. We will ensure that your current network is simplified. Then we will also ensure that our proposed network will facilitate some of your growth aspirations. Next, we will have Stephen Tolbert, who will provide you all with our wonderful recommendations. Stephen?
Thank you so much, Erica. So our recommendation, we are a global brand. So our recommendation is to implement a globalized regional logistics strategy to optimize your network. And by doing this, we leverage company volume. We'll also make sure that we take advantage of cost savings, reducing costs, and in addition to that, we'll make sure we optimize your supply base. While doing this, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be able to save CME $215 million on an annual basis. That's exciting. Our strategic solutions. How are we going to go about resolving all the relevant issues Erika mentioned? First of all, we're going to make sure the network is optimized. Our current network, as is optimized, can also withstand, is robust enough to withstand a 47% growth in customer demand. Secondly, we'll further evaluate real 3PLs. We also want to develop a routing guide, and this is very significant because it will make sure we strive for efficiency, but at the same time, it's tied back to our sustainability initiative. We want to make sure we can assess our carbon footprint. Next is our contract evaluation. Our contract evaluation, we have a cost structure that is a fixed price incentives fee. It's a motivational factor for our suppliers, and we're excited about this. We'll also make sure that we have a reverse auction among our top suppliers. In addition to that, we have our service level agreements to make sure that our suppliers are meeting our expectations and the specific requirements and criteria we have. Now, we'll also have an exit contractual clause. So if there's any supplier who's not meeting those criteria and expectations, we can make sure we can exit those contracts without legal ramification or high cost. Lastly, we'll leverage our TMS and WMS, which is very vital. We have the infrastructure in place, but we believe it's not fully leveraged. Therefore, we're going to make sure we use it to its fullest potential. And by doing that, we have information sharing. Information sharing, according to MIT studies, show that CME can save anywhere from 2% to up to 12%. And that is 16 to 96 million we did not put in the 250 million you saw up there. So we're excited about that. In addition to that, we want to make sure we improve our processes as well as our systems. And by doing that, ladies and gentlemen, we focus on training our staffs. Next, I'll talk to you about SWOT analysis. This is very important. The SWOT emphasizes our decision rationale in terms of the recommendation we provided you, in terms of the solutions and all of these processes that we were talking about, in terms of assumptions too that we did make in this case. This is a very complex case, but this helped frame our entire process. And by doing this, we focus on both our internal as well as our external environment. The key warning here that we need to pay attention to is the fact that commodity prices has been rising. We need to pay attention to that because it impacts our business. Next, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Layan Mutongo, who will tell you specifically where the 250 million is coming from. Layan.
Thank you, Steve. So right now, I wanted to give you a visualization of what Erika already spoke of. It's a very complex network system with all of those lines representing different multiple routes inside them. So as you can see there, but let's get into the cost evaluation. So first we have 3 models, which are based on the assumption that you do not change your routes or your warehouse city locations. The difference between model 1, 2, and 3 is that model is 100% awarded to the incumbents. Model 2 is awarded to the lowest cost provider. Model 3 is to the highest quality provider. But these all fell into comparison to our optimal route. And as you can see here, the due monthly model, which is model 1, compared to our optimization model, there's 215 million. Let's get into where that comes from. Specifically, this is our decomposition of that growth, of that savings potential. You can see there about 25% is being derived from strategically selecting our suppliers. And largely 70% of this is coming from our route optimization that coincides with Stephen's mentioning of the route guides. You can see there, we cut out 90% of the routes. There was 1,000, we got it down to 129 to maximize our network. And this would still facilitate a 47% growth. Now that I've gone over where the savings is coming from, I'm gonna give it back to Steve to show you how to implement this.
Thank you so much, Larry. So our implementation consists of 3 phases. In phase 1, we'll make sure our network is optimized. Phase 2, we'll focus on contract evaluation. And phase 3, we focus on making sure we leverage our TMS and WMS. By doing this, we will make sure we have our change management board in place. Next, we want to focus on sustainability as a cornerstone, as I alluded to earlier. By also having our sustainability, we want to make sure we can measure all of these things. We're giving you great strategy, great recommendation. How are we going to measure this on a consistent basis? We have 3 members on this team that are 6 Sigma Green Belt certified. We're proposing that we implement a Green Belt methodology that will make sure we eradicate waste and eliminate variations from our systems. Secondly, we have a scorecard called SCOR without the E. And this score, and with the score strategy, what this does is a unique framework that links performance metrics. It also links best practices and our people, bringing everything together in a uniform structure. And we have significant benefits from this because we'll be able to analyze gaps and all of that within our supply chain. Next, I will talk to you about sustainability initiative that I mentioned earlier. Our sustainability initiative focuses on 4 areas: quality, the environment, safety, and security. The key takeaway from here is I want us to start, we recommend that we start assessing our carbon footprint. I'll now turn it over to turn it over to Erika, who is bringing you our conclusion.
So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, we've discussed a number of things. We discussed our relevant issues and how we plan to alleviate some of these issues. Leon provided you with an optimization model and showed you where we can save $215 million annually. In addition to that, our proposed optimization model can facilitate a robust growth of 47% within your customer demands. Thank you so much, and we open the floor for questions and answers.
I have a question for you guys around your warehouses. Did you guys take a look at greenfielding your warehouse, greenfield locations versus the current locations to further optimize that utilization going into those 16 distribution centers?
And I'm sorry, what was that term again? Greenfielding?
Yeah, greenfield.
Greenfield. With respect to our main assumption that we wanted to take in consideration was the assumption. So I'm not actually too familiar with the term greenfield, but where we wanted to look at these locations was to also facilitate the growth opportunity. So we noticed that 98% of the demand is arriving from the UK base, those 5 markets, Wales and Scotland. And so we assumed that as this company continues to grow, acquiring other companies, that they're needed to look at those other 11 areas. So that's where we've selected a lot of our bases, was the capacity to fulfill future growth capacity, which, just to give you the numbers, we can still facilitate a 51% growth based on our network.
So with the route reductions, you mentioned that I think it's about 80% on the route reductions. Is there service impact at all? Quality, service, all those taken into consideration? Was anything impacted by such a drastic reduction in routes?
Yes, that was certainly a concern. And let me show you one of our appendix. So this is an example of one of our routes. So when we coined this term and we listed out our key terms, definitions, as a trip, we found that on average there was about 14 routes that went to that facilitated a same trip. So it's going from, let's say, New Orleans to Atlanta, or New Orleans to DC. It's still one trip, but they had multiple routes in there. So we picked, and this is an example of one of our trips here. We ranked them on a 70-30 card, 70% going to capacity level, 30% going to the price, the expected price, where we use the PERT system. Now, the reason why we're still confident that quality will be there is because that although we filtered out a lot of the additional routes, we still are selective amongst our preferred route vendors. So first, get the routes, take out 90% of it. Second, look at who's the most quality and who can optimize the network most efficiently.
So in your future, your recommended model, for what impact does that have to your current supply base? So did you consolidate down to X number? What impact do you foresee for CME on board with that? And did you introduce any new suppliers?
Yes. And let me show, I have a little graph. These are our transportation modelers. So originally there was 9 suppliers that for transportation, there was 3 suppliers for the warehouses. The graph on the left is our transportation suppliers, which is actually the most affected. We actually have 25 now suppliers. Now we did feel that the constraint of 1%, under 1%, was too rigid, because we're anticipating growth in these markets that are only making up about 2% of the quantity demand. So our assumption, now we did raise the cost on administrative fees. We had about an assumption of $5 million based on managing more suppliers. But we feel that these are set up in an area that's going to facilitate the growth in the non-UK markets.
When we were talking about your contract evaluations and such, you mentioned the possibility of using reverse auctions. I wondered which area, whether transportation or warehouse, you were intending to use that in, and what might be the risks.
Do you want to? Okay. So to give I think it's, This is inbound transportation. So this is going to be from picking up the goods from our manufacturing, the manufacturing sites. There's 18 of them. We simplified it over here. We took out 11 of them that would not optimize the model. But let's take BE to WH. Is that 13? 13. That model is going to consist of over, I believe it was 20 suppliers. So your question is, how do we look at the contract evaluation with the reverse? We selected the most efficient location first, then we went to the quality suppliers, then we're going to leverage them to kind of compete on pricing ability, to kind of also help reduce the cost of our contracts and agreements that we set up with these companies. So routes came first, then we filtered it by companies who we prefer to be the most optimal, and we have some supplier rankings that we can also go over later, but that was a methodology.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is not even a follow-up on that, but you also mentioned commodity prices being a factor in some of your considerations. So what do you see the impact of our commodity prices being on our business? And then which commodities do you see having the most impact or effect on what we do?
Thank you so much for that question. I think the commodity price, in terms of the one that is very important, I think is crude oil prices, other raw material prices too, but crude oil, that will affect transportation rates. We try to leverage and negotiate with our suppliers, so that would definitely affect transportation rates.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.